In this day and age, it is more important than ever to get the right information in front of the right people at the right time, especially at the enterprise level. So that's one of the main reasons that today on CMS Connected, we're talking about modern enterprise portals. And this subject is so deep and so big that we need two experts, and I'm not talking about Scott here. So we bring in Michael Hahn, Director of Operations, VP of Operations for Liferay. Michael, thanks for coming in.
Oh, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Let's talk about your role at Liferay and what you do and why this subject is so important to you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my role at Liferay essentially is to ensure our customers are successful in their solutions that they're delivering, whether it's a customer portal, whether it's to help their partners collaborate better, to reduce the cost of servicing their customers or they're supporting their customers.
Great. Let's bring in our other expert for this segment. He is the co-founder and principal analyst at Digital Clarity Group, Tim Walters. Tim, how are you, my friend?
Doing fine, Butch. It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, great to have you here, Tim. Tim, let me start with the softball question, if you will, or maybe it's not. Why is there still a lot of confusion about this term and the technology when we're talking about portals and modern enterprise portals? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, it's been kind of a question around portals since the very beginning, and it actually caused not just confusion but a lot of unsatisfactory implementations in the early days, and that's because first of all, there's confusion about what you mean by a portal as a type of website. So it's what you're building. It's what you're trying to produce and present to your visitors or your customers. And usually a portal is just means that it's something that either aggregates information from other sites and repositories or points to other sites and repositories. So it's a portal, it's a gateway in the literal sense. And then there's portal servers, the technology, the software technology that you might use to build a portal. And in the early days, in kind of the first generation from, say, roughly 2000 through 2006-07, a lot of people were confused, or they made the leap from thinking that what they were building was a portal to being certain that what they needed to build that portal with was a portal server. And that's not always the case. And matter of fact, there are many, many cases in which either you're confused about what you're building, it's not really a portal, it's just a kind of sophisticated website, or what you are building is a portal, but you don't necessarily need a portal server to build it. And so a lot of people overbought or simply bought the wrong thing. And it led to, and those early portals were often heavy, complicated things to operate, took a lot of development, and it led to a lot of unsatisfactory outcomes in the early days.
Hey, Tim, so just a quick follow-up on that, though. I mean, I would imagine that analysts still seem to be just as confused. I'm not sure how customers should be expected not to be confused when the likes of Gartner just produced this horizontal portal MQ. Tell me, I mean.
Yeah, exactly. So in the analyst community around 2009, 2010, I mean, we were having discussions that maybe the portal server would disappear as a meaningful software category. I mean, did it make sense anymore? And this was because of the emergence of things like widgets and mashup technologies that were capable of doing many of the same things as portlet technologies based upon the JSR standards. And in a certain way, I would argue that, in fact, it has disappeared as a meaningful software category. And the best piece of evidence for that is precisely the most recent Gartner Magic Quadrant on what they call horizontal portals. Because if you look at that document, it contains, or the graphic, it contains, what are traditional kind of portal servers, IBM WebSphere, Oracle Web Center, and, the kind of open source lighter weight tools like Liferay, Drupal, arguably a portal, but more of a web content management system. But then it includes Adobe Experience Manager, it includes Sitecore, and my favorite, it includes Salesforce.com. Now, when you're putting all of those things together in a bucket and writing horizontal portal on the side of it, horizontal portal doesn't mean anything anymore.
Interesting. So let me bring Michael back into this a little bit. Michael, so tell us, we were thinking about them, and even as Tim talked about, there's been a number of kind of reinvigorations of life essentially for portals, and it seemed like they were going to kind of die off into irrelevance for a while. They were talking about the death of portals, but there's this resurgence now. Tell us.
I think to Tim's point is that a lot of people are confused about what is a portal, right? I think the analysts that made the call of, hey, this is the death knell of portals, they were actually really very much correct about the first generation, right? First generation portals, if you really look at them from the vendors like WebLogic or BEA at the time, WebSphere, et cetera, they were very much just tools to help sell application servers. There's a tremendous cost to actually implement and actually roll out a solution.
Yeah.
But now if we actually look at today's portals, and if you look at the Magic Quadrant, there's a lot of different tools out there, whether it's content management, whether it's portals. But I think the one thing you will find is that a lot of these tools incorporate web content management, social collaboration, and of course the fundamental foundations of a portal, which is the ability for you to easily integrate data from your enterprise systems or even third-party data sources, right? If you're in financials, for example, going out to Yodlee or one of those other aggregators.
Yeah, gotcha. So Tim, what about you? Similar question there. I mean, what do you think is? By the way, I think interesting point that Michael makes there about it was a subtle one, but I want to harp on it a little bit. That portals became kind of the ways for vendors to essentially sell application servers. I think that's an interesting point, and I heard you kind of chuckle about that. But what are some of your thoughts about kind of just the resurgence in general?
Yeah, I think the resurgence is because the world is getting more and more complicated, and with the whatever you want to call it, the era of the customer or empowered consumers and digital disruptions and so forth. And I think the best way to think about this in terms of portals and portal technologies like Liferay is in terms of Geoffrey Moore's distinction between, or not distinction, but discussion of systems of record and systems of engagement. And systems of record are those things that are, quote unquote, infrastructural elements such as ERP and databases inside the enterprise. And those things, kind of laid the groundwork for the modern enterprise, but they don't do a good job at all of interacting in a dynamic and interesting and engaging way with consumers. That's what systems of engagement are for. And in order to power systems of engagement, however, you have to tie them into those systems of record. You have to make all of that information available, often very, very quickly in microseconds for a satisfactory customer experience. And portal servers are the perfect technology because they're, in one sense, they're middleware, and in another sense, they're the UI layer. They're the user experience layer on top of all of this in terms of personalization, customization, dynamic elements, and so forth. And so if you realize the challenge now is to create really powerful and superior systems of engagement by drawing onto and integrating with your systems of record, a portal server is a natural technology to use for that.
So I wonder what both of you think, and whoever wants to jump in here, maybe Michael, have you start with this, and then Tim, we can get your thoughts on this. I actually just did an advisory day yesterday with a digital agency, and we were talking about holistic CEM and customer experience management, and the idea that it's more than just tailored, relevant experiences, that marketers try to do as another way to kind of personalize experiences for customers and prospects, but rather that, Tim, as you've written about an awful lot, that holistic CEM is really about, it's an entire organizational challenge, and it's how we essentially, the customer experience as it goes beyond just the buying process or the review process and really into how can we leverage insights when a customer is calling into support? How can they know what they've just done on the web? How can that be transferred over for the sales folks to be able to make sense of this? And the question that was posed to me was, well then, we need to have a system, don't we? What's going to be the big system that's going to house all this data? And it's a similar question to one posed when I was on an analyst panel at Gilbane recently, where they said kind of what's going to be the new big giant system of record then? Is it like the content management system, or is it a new CRM system? Where's all this stuff going to live? And shouldn't we be feeding some big massive system? To me, that seems to be going back to the mistakes of ERP. And I wonder if portals can play a role here in being able to kind of build these bridges amongst where these various systems of record have an awful lot of data to be able to bring the right information to the right person at the right time. What do you think about that?
I absolutely agree. Because I mean, if you look at the ERP days, right, and there's a lot of companies still implementing ERPs, but these are multi-million-dollar, multi-year projects. And if we take any lessons learned from the Agile movement, the Agile software methodology, it's you want to deliver fast, you want to deliver frequently, and you want to make sure that you get feedback from your business stakeholders and so on. And this is where portals come in, because portals are designed for modularity, which basically means that you would develop a certain module, whether it's to encourage your support people to log on and see what customers are actually doing. What did they buy? How are they interacting with your sales channels? And then you roll out another module to facilitate your marketing team, see what customers are actually doing. What are they browsing for this, through the site and things like that. So it's very much about keeping things small and delivering value immediately to the business in iterations.
Sure, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I know, Tim, that you talk a lot about kind of a lean approach as well. I mean, I'm envisioning, and tell me your thoughts on this, I'm envisioning literally a support person using their support tools comes up on the screen and they're seeing all the past calls that this particular customer has made, but why not also show the activities they just had on the website, which would have been coming from some, WCM system or analytics system? Why can't they also see the service records for this, all in one place? And that's how I'm thinking about it. What are your thoughts there, and also about what Michael said?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, maybe there's a terminological nicety here, because we talk about a system of record, and typically that means, as you said, the one that's going to own everything. And that's probably not a satisfactory path to take anymore. It's more about letting the stuff live where it lives and integrating, concentrating on the integration. In other words, the portal server can be the kind of system in the sense not of a repository where you suck up all this stuff and harbor it as the system of record, but a system in the sense of the dynamic connections between the various elements in the call center, on the website, in the marketing automation platform, in your customer databases, and in your ERP systems and your production databases, that brings all of this together to create that system of engagement for both employees, as in the scenario you just described, and of course for the prospects and customers that you're engaging with on the front side.
Tim Walters of Digital Clarity Group joining us on this edition of CMS Connected as we're talking about modern enterprise portals, alongside is Michael Hahn of Liferay, Scott Lewer, co-host of CMS Connected. I'm Butch Stearns of the Pulse Network. So Scott, let's go right back to the beginning of all of this and the importance of portals. So are they more important than ever now? Is there renewed life? Is that why this wave is where it is?
I think there is definitely renewed life. And again, I think the distinction about portal servers versus the idea of pulling information together, there is definitely a thirst for the latter, which is driving, in many cases, a thirst for the former. But the thirst for the latter is, again, we've got all of these silos of data, and rather than this idea of busting those down, which many want to call for, which is frankly silly, it's more about how do you harvest information from each, and where and when, and when you need it. And I think that's the role that the technology can start to play.
So Michael, I'm curious what you hear from your customers and your clients, the ones that are out there, what's keeping them up at night, and how portals are helping them address some of those issues.
Absolutely. So, I mean, back 10 years ago, I was with a company called Broadvision, which very much was recognized as a leader in this space. Sure. But then, a lot of customers had a hard time implementing. The costs were very high and so on. When I talk to my customers today, it's very much the same message. It's about, well, I want to make it much simpler for me to go and talk to my customers, to talk to my employees and my partners. So what can I do to do that? And this is where, we look at the portal world as, hey, let's not just talk about integrating this back-end data. How do we bring about the content into the picture? How do we bring about social collaboration tools into the picture? So now we can have crowdsourcing. So we can have customers helping each other, partners helping each other. And this way help overall reduce that cost of engagement, cost of implementation.
Tim, your thoughts about those conversations that Michael's having with his customers?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And there's no doubt that's the kind of conversations or the kinds of desires that we hear from companies as well, and from service providers and agencies who are trying to implement these kinds of technologies and come up with the appropriate solutions. I think, on the other hand, if I'm looking forward a little bit, at the same time that people have a desire for simplicity, the things are getting more and more complicated. I mean, already, we're supposed to be into the age of customer experience management, and yet, if you're lucky, some of the leading companies are doing kind of digital marketing. They're not really approaching omni-channel customer experience management yet. So imagine how hard that's going to be. And then within a few years, the Internet of Things is going to be in full swing. And now that experience that you're trying to create and manage for your customers has to include not only all of the individual touch points between your brand and that customer, but also all of these connected things and all of the relationships between them. And it just gets more and more complicated, although from the customer perspective, it has to be simpler and simpler. It has to be more and more transparent. So I think the technology challenge or the software and integration challenge is going to get ever greater, and that's where portal server technologies, if that's what we continue to call them, are going to become more and more important as we go forward.
I agree with you, Michael. So tell me your thoughts on this. Obviously, as a stakeholder in the future of portal technology, what is the kind of the broader Liferay specifically and the broader portal market in general going to look like in the next 3 to 5 years?
Well, if there's anything in the marketplace, the constant thing is change, right? And we're very excited about the speed at which technology is changing. So if we look at, even in the mobile device realm, phones are, I don't want to say yesterday, but now what we're really looking towards is how do we now incorporate more attached devices like your wearables, things on your smartwatch, things like that. How do we bring that, leverage that in the enterprise so that we can bring information to people on the move much more smoothly, much more quickly. So we're investing very heavily in terms of turning the portal not just into something that presents user interfaces, but think about it as a presentation of data, a headless portal.
Gotcha.
And certainly along with the impact of the massive amounts of data we gather, right? User interactions through the website and things like that. Big data and data mining are huge investments for us, right? Digging into those areas.
So let's wrap up this conversation with a comment from all three of you. I mean, it seems to me, Tim, let me start with you, that we started this whole conversation talking about the portals were the buzz 10 years ago. Well, let's look into the crystal ball 10 years ahead. So you did such a good job explaining it off the top, but 10 years from now, are we still going to be as confused about portals and portal servers going forward?
Yeah, I certainly hope not. I would say, but I think that maybe I guess I'll take the stand and say that I hope we're not talking about portals and portal servers in 10 years. And already today, I would say, as I noted, when you've got a document like the Magic Quadrant for that mix of software companies and the products that they produce, it doesn't make any sense to call all of those portals, and it doesn't matter whether you do. What matters is what is the appropriate technology for the job you're trying to get done. And if you want to call that a portal, if the thing that is being offered is called a portal server, fine. If it's a widget and mashup platform, fine. If it's a user experience platform, if it's a customer experience management platform, even if it's Salesforce.com, if it gets the job done, which, as we've all agreed, is really increasingly about integration from various repositories and even the Internet of Things. I mean, Intando, one of the Italian kind of minor portal players, is now transforming itself into kind of a user interface for the Internet of Things, and that makes perfect sense. That is a technology that's appropriate for doing that. But I think that's the question going forward: is what do you need in order to get the job done, and less so about what you're going to call it.
Yeah, I think that the only thing that we know about 10 years from now is that we'll be 10 years older. I mean, the accelerating pace of change is just ridiculous. If we think that it was only, 7.5 years ago that the iPhone was introduced and what has happened since then. But we'll still turn the same question to you, Michael, and have you answer the same question as Tim did, is kind of what's this look like?
Coming from a vendor that sells a enterprise portal product, certainly we hope that we are still talking about that in 10 years. But really, from our standpoint, it's not about the technology stack. It's not about, am I on Java, am I on a portal server? It's really about the solutions we're going to create, right? And I think fundamentally, in 10 years, we're still going to be talking about these solutions because they are very much appropriate for the business problems we're seeing. And as data continues to grow, this is going to be more and more of a problem.
Yep. Well, Michael, thanks for your time. Thanks for coming in studio. Michael
Appreciate it.
Hahn from Liferay, and Tim, as always, Tim Walters from Digital Clarity Group. Thanks for your time.